It's the Rangers Journal now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob, and we are bringing you your weekly dose of the Rangers news this week here at the Rangers Journal. I have two guests with me today who'll run through the various topics that we've seen this week in the world related to Rangers. First of all, Richard, I'll come to yourself. Thanks very much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's Friday. Got to be happy with that. Looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, same here, same here. It's a bit wet where I am. Looks a bit brighter where you are at the moment, Richard. But yeah, looking forward to the upcoming weekend. And we've got Billy as well. Billy, how are you today, pal?
Good. A lot more happening in Rangers land this week, so plenty to talk about.
Yeah, we're kind of looking at it this time last week when I was on with Doug. We didn't really have very much to go on other than the upcoming EGM. So yeah, we've certainly had a far more topics to discuss this week than we did last week. So I think with that being said, we'll just jump straight in, just touching back on the EGM that occurred at the start of the week. All the resolutions were approved by the board, and it really gave us our first chance to see and listen to the new chairman, Andrew Kavanagh, and the vice chairman, Parag Marathi. Richard, I'll come to yourself first of all. What were your thoughts on the EGM? I think it was a pretty much a formality, but maybe just touching more on the interview that Kavanagh and Marathi gave to Rangers TV, and obviously the kind of clips and sound bites that have come out since the EGM on Monday.
Yeah, I just thought everything went through fairly straightforward. Everything that he said, from what he could say, appealed to the fans. He didn't really go overboard and make false promises or anything like that. But I think, on the whole, I think the fans have been pretty happy with it. He's without going into.
Nope. Cut out there a wee bit, Richard. Maybe come to yourself, Billy. Come back to see if Richard comes back in or not. Billy, what were your thoughts on the EGM?
I mean, pretty much what you would hope.
The fans are on.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm.
Oh, yeah, you cut out there a wee bit, Richard. Sorry.
But yeah, I was just saying that at the end of it, I think all the fans are pretty pleased with what's been said.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly seemed to be a positive meeting, and obviously the way they came across in the interview was good to hear and see them for the first time, and what they said seemed to certainly get a lot of fans on board. Billy, I'll let you come back in, kind of finish what you were saying on your point there regarding the EGM and the interviews.
They were pretty much what you would hope and expect. These are serious players. They're media trained. They know what they're doing, and it kind of came across that way. Like Parag Marathi has got this track record, and clearly his buzz is getting into a sporting organisation and bringing success and growing it. He's done it twice, so if he does it a third time, we'll be happy. Andrew Kavanagh I thought was quite interesting, but I thought he came across very well. I thought they clearly had their media lines they were going to feed us, and that's what we were getting and not much else, which again, that's professional. I also liked he had a slightly menacing air for me, which I like about someone, running Rangers. So nothing against, like nice guys and everything, but I think we need a few more Dave King type characters in, and I certainly got the vibe that he was nice, but there was an underlying steeliness. Maybe that's me just projecting, but that was the vibe I got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, Billy. I think the way that they came across was, again, they wanted to again project, probably just as you said, project a positive air. I think the good word that they used, or one of the good words that they used was, they aim to be a catalyst. They don't want to just throw money at us, see us win a league title and walk off into the sunset. They're here for the long term, or the relatively long term, to get us to be sustainable both on and off the pitch, which is very good to hear, considering everything that's been well documented that's happened to us over the last 10 to 15 years. And it certainly bodes well that they come across, that they're not they're not inexperienced in business. I think they both, obviously Parag, having been involved with the 49ers for such a long period of time, and also latterly with Leeds United over the last few years. Again, it certainly looks good from the outset that, as they said, they kind of aim to take the blueprint of what went right and what went wrong at the likes of Leeds and with the 49ers and look to apply it to us. So hopefully that streamlines us to be successful far quicker than what they've maybe seen at the likes of Leeds United, which have obviously taken a few ups and downs over the last couple of years. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, I think it was obviously a good start to meet with the EGM. Obviously, the resolutions passed and the money that was talked about, the 20 million, has now been made available to the team. Obviously, I think they mentioned that they don't want to give that was a kind of base figure, but I think they're open to spending or investing more money into the team and into the club as they see fit. I think it was also quite interesting to listen to them say that if we are successful, you won't really hear very much from them, which again I think is a good thing. I think all too often we've seen far too much from the board side over recent years in terms of just being in the news. So I'm kind of hopeful that but we're starting to see a return to more focus on the playing side than the board and the business side of things. So yeah, it certainly seems positive moving forward. With that being said, it was also the first week of pre-season for the first team, coming back to the training centre on Monday of this week. Obviously, a lot of familiar faces returned, as was seen through the various clips that had been shared over social media. Billy, I'll come to you on this one. What are your thoughts on the first week back? I know that we'll come on to the new signing that we received during the week with Max Aarons, but yeah, just what were your thoughts on seeing those shots of the team back in action for pre-season?
I must admit, Bob, I find myself wondering what it must be like to be doing a pre-season like that, because a lot of the players that are there will be wondering about the future. They'll be wondering, some players will be excited because, they maybe drifted to the periphery and they think they can work their way into the picture under the new manager. There might be other players who are, one eye on the exit door and maybe more interested in not getting an injury if they've got a big move coming up. And everyone's looking to see who's coming in because, like you talk about Max Aaron as an example, and it's going to take, I'm so used to calling him Aaron, and then he goes and tells us you pronounce it Aaron. So get so used to, certain players like Tav, we know he moves, he needs moved either onto the bench or to be like a bit part player in the next season or two. That's quite a big deal. So the whole dynamic, in terms of who's the captain, who's going to be the leadership group, the whole thing's in flux, and it must be interesting to be a player, and if you're a young player, like a Lyle Cameron, injury notwithstanding, coming in, you're looking at the future, you're looking at your possibilities, you're quite excited. Maybe if you're someone like Tav and you're coming into the final year and you're looking at your testimonial and you're looking at guys coming in who are going to take your position and guys coming in who have been touted as captains, it's a different motivation. So I think it was going to be interesting. I'm hearing a lot when I've listened to Southampton and other podcasts where they're talking about Russell Martin's kind of managerial skills, and it comes across as a big thing for him that the players really get on board and would run through a brick wall for him, and that the fans eventually get the same way. I think it's going to be a big test of his managerial skills, like keeping this group of very disparate motivations, disparate and players, who, like I say, don't really know what's coming next, keeping them all focused, because the rump of this bunch of players is going to have to try and get us through against Panathinaikos. So he's going to have to keep them on board while bringing in what looks like a lot of new players, ones that we all know we need. But that's going to be a test of his management skills. How does he build that togetherness, that sense of purpose, that sense of joint momentum with people who are all at very different stages in their careers, the Rangers' careers, some who are going to feel motivated, some who are going to feel under threat. So I don't think you can say much based on the first week other than please don't get injured, because you're always worried about someone pulling a hammy or something the first couple of days back. So too early to really say too much, but I think it is going to be interesting in the next 3 or 4 weeks to see how Russell Martin gels the team and builds that togetherness while hopefully infusing us with a lot of new talent.
Sure, no, I understand that, Billy. I think it's always difficult, and again, I think we've all clamoured for a number of new signings to come in early on in this window to try and get bed us in for those Champions League qualifiers and obviously the start of the league season, which is on the horizons slowly but surely. What about yourself, Richard? What were your thoughts? And we'll maybe just move into the Max Aarons chat as well. What were your thoughts? Obviously, seeing the shots, and I think the training video was released yesterday. For those that are back, and again, we know that the internationals are back at the start of next week, which again will give us a wee bit more insight into the strategy that Martin wants to take as a manager with the squad. So yeah, just what were your thoughts on the kind of shots and the videos released this week?
It's quite good. It's obviously interesting for us fans, from afar, being able to see what it is that they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. But most of it, the drills and stuff like that I was looking for, what I was looking at was the intensity of it, where they're at, what they're doing. More so trying to build a better picture of what Russell Martin's trying to instill, because they're good players, right? At the end of the day, whether or not they're good enough is different. But one thing from last season to this season and what Russell Martin is supposedly really good at is building that mentality, that ethic that will, as you said, players want to run through bricks walls for him. So what I'm looking for in the videos is where I can spot that, and that's really what I'm going to be looking at in the first game. Is where can I see the difference in the players, especially ones there from last season where I've seen there's a marked improvement here. That's really what I'm looking for with the videos, and hopefully, somebody like Max Aarons, who knows Russell Martin as well, is going to bring that, knows what to expect, and can push, the players that we've already got there, to help them build into that mentality and that work ethic that hopefully we're going to see.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that is probably a good segue, as you said, Richard, into Max Aarons. So again, that was formally announced this week by the club. I know it had been rumoured that he was going to come in. The first real official signing for the Russell Martin era being Max Aarons, the fullback, 25-year-old fullback coming on loan from Bournemouth. So again, straight loan, no obligation, no option to buy from what we've read and what's been reported. Billy, I'll come to you on this one. Just as kind of we're touching on off air before we jumped on the live, my interest will be that considering it's a straight loan, I suspect he will get a good chunk of playing time this year. Hopefully, injuries hopefully aren't an issue with him. What do you think that means for Tav and maybe just for the team overall, considering this time next year, Tav's out of contract, and if we don't make a move for Aarons, Aaron, I'm going to say Aaron. It's easier for me. I feel say I'm not. I don't feel American enough to say Aaron. So, what are your thoughts on his signing and how that will impact the team in the position, especially being more so a right back? I know he can play both sides, but maybe more so looking at Tav's position.
I mean, how he's going to impact the team, that's going to need a crystal ball for that. How I hope he impacts the team is, and just to go on the record, I think Tav has been fantastic. I think in the years where Tav has got a lot of stick, I think he hasn't been the issue. I think there have been years where if players of similar calibre were around Tavernier, we would have won more. So I think he's actually suffered from being a bit of a standout, looking at his stats, etc. So I'm a big Tav fan, both as a player and as a person. But He's been in decline for a couple of years. His stats tell you that. You can see it on the pitch. You know, it's taken him the last couple of years increasingly long to get motoring, and it hasn't been a full season at top performance. So what you're hoping is that Max Aarons effectively benches Tav for a lot of the season, or there's that possibility that we've talked about where Aarons comes in at right back, like you say, he can cover it left, but he comes in and Tav is looked at as a ball-playing central defender, which, you know, like Russell Martin may be looking at that as we speak. I think it'll be interesting to see if Max Aarons is the player that we've been hearing about. And no, he didn't have a great season at Valencia last year, but if he's the player that we've been hearing about previously in his career, I think it might be quite refreshing to see him go in, because I think with Tavernier, we've known that he's kind of been in decline, but I think when that happens gradually, we've almost been conditioned to sort of see him as having a decent game or a good game and not really been able to put that side by side the Tavernier 3-4 years ago. I think putting someone like Aarons in, who is like, if he's fit and up to speed, and apparently is like a bit of an engine just going up and down the kind of the flank, I think that might be a bit of a whoa, like, yeah, that's what we've been missing. That's what I'm hoping for. And again, you know, Tavernier, it's simply age catching up with him. And I would love him to become a ball-playing central defender and just go and win things that way. That'd be a lovely kind of like, you know, final chapter to his Rangers career. But if Tavernier plays the bulk of the games this season, something's gone wrong with this move, either form or injury or whatever, because Aaron's looking at his career, looking at his age, presuming the cost that will be involved, and we're taking him on with, like you say, no obligation or option to buy. So that's us giving up a lot of the power in the potential transaction. We're bringing him in, I think, to be a first-team player. And I think that's what I'm hoping to see next season. And Aarons gives me a lot of hope, because along with the other signings that we're making, it is actually like Thelwell and his team are sitting and they're looking at the team the way we're looking at the team and going, Tav needs replaced, or Tav needs upgraded. You know, we're looking at Connor Cody. We know that the central defence needs upgraded. We know we need leaders in the leadership group. We know we need a change in mentality. And they're quietly and steadily starting to tick these boxes. So I'm hoping, I'm quite excited to see her, and it'll be bittersweet, because nobody likes to see someone like a club legend like Tavernier, entering the sunset of his career. But ultimately, we need to start winning things, and Tav's not at the right end of his career for that. So I'm excited, and I'm expecting. I think you'll see a wee bit of back and forth early in the season, but if Max Aaron isn't the number one 10 games into the season, I think that the plan's gone a wee bit askew.
Yeah, I certainly think, based on what he's come out with and what the club have reported, the fact that he was mentioning about bringing new energy to the project, obviously having, he sees Russell Martin as a father figure. I know it's been kind of really well publicised through his own interviews on certain podcasts, that he sees Russell Martin as a father figure, and that's probably part of the draw of coming to the club, as well as the club itself, through his interview through RTV. Richard, what about yourself? What are your thoughts on Aarons? The fact that the first signing is a defensive one, which again we know that we need reinforcements in, and how do you think that will play into the kind of the upcoming season? I know as Billy said, it's a bit of a crystal ball question, but do you think the same? Do you think he should be the starting right back first game against Motherwell away, or do you think he'll maybe just he'll chop and change with Tav just to see how both of them got on?
It's difficult to say, because we don't know what Martin's actually going to play. We know what his system was at his previous clubs. We think it's going to be the same. We don't know, but I don't think he's been brought in to sit on the bench. It doesn't make any sense. He's going to be on a good wage, coming from a Premier League club. He's at a good age. Tav's likely he's not going to get the minutes this season that he's had previously. We need somebody to push him, and we discussed in the pod last night is moving perhaps inside a bit more. But I think it's a good signing. I think it's a good start defensively. Last season we were shocking, so it makes perfect sense to me it's somebody that Russell Martin knows, so it's someone that he's going to trust immediately. So I would expect to see him playing in the first game against Panathinaikos, because he knows what he can deliver. It's just whether or not he can. And if I can just answer one of the questions you put up from Curry about who you're hoping that shows up, there's a few obvious ones, but for me, Cortez is definitely the one. And I was thinking about it earlier because he gets so much stick from the fans. Right? He had a good start when he joined. I mean, I was at the Hearts game, the 5-0 Hearts game, where he scored a cracker after only 20 minutes. You know, he showed us in glimpses, but he's been out injured and he gets so much stick for it. And he hasn't done well the games where he has came on when he's coming back for it. But like, Danilo's also been injured just as much, but he doesn't get the same amount of stick from the fans. So I'm looking at him as well. So Cortez and Danilo for me are the ones that, you know, I think they're going to be given probably the first 6 months of the season if they're fit to play, and the fans are definitely going to be on their back if the performances aren't there. So they're the two that we've got currently that I think will still be here next season, that I'm going to be looking for performances from them.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Richard. I think, you know, the fact that we have obviously brought Cortez in now on that, you know, obligation to buy that was so much, you know, talked about over the current, you know, towards the end of last season, having not really seen him come in and play a lot of games under Clement, and then obviously latterly with Barry. He'll certainly be one that, you know, the spotlight's on in the early games of the season to see how much game time he gets, and then how well he performs in those games. Will certainly be telling, especially in as you kind of touched on, the way that Martin likes to play. You know, I think wingers or forward players will be kind of instrumental in the way he wants to press high up the park. So, you know, it could very well be Cortez as a very integral part to play. It was interesting, just as you said, that touching on the training video that was released, that you know, there was a lot of chat, and it looked as if you could see quite a lot of Cortez in and about. I know they're still getting the basics of the formations and strategy that Martin wants to play. It was certainly interesting to see him being, you know, fully included in that group. I know it's only the kind of the non-internationals that were there, but it was still interesting to see him and latterly Kieran Dowell kind of seemed to be quite instrumental in some of the kind of the small-sided games that they were doing at the training park. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they got on again. You know, the likes of Kieran Dowell, and we'll touch on Ben Davis latterly. But again, the fact that they've had a good 6 months at Birmingham, you know, had the success with Birmingham getting promoted, come back, fresh start, English manager. You know, Martin will know Dowell from their time at Norwich as well, so that'll be an interesting one to see how that plays out. Personally, I always thought Dowell was a good player. You know, again, injuries aside, and when he came, if we could get him fit, I thought we could really get a tune out of him. He has shown in flashes that he is a very good player, but again, just consistency and injuries have not been kind to him. Billy, maybe just come back to yourself on that question from Curry, you know, regarding who do you think from the squad of players that we currently have, who do you think, you know, will get a chance under Martin? Who do you think or expect to see shine? You know, as he kind of mentioned in his interview last week, a couple of weeks ago, you know, there's always somebody that surprises him. You know, who do you think may surprise him when he sees the squad in pre-season?
Well, I'm not actually sure I want to answer Curry's question, seeing as he seems to imply that I'm no the eye candy on the show, which I've got my bus seat top on and everything. So I think that's harsh. It's interesting. You're talking about Davis and Dowell. I've seen a couple of flashes from Dowell, literally a couple of flashes in games where you go, oh, like, you know, look what he can do. And the word that sort of springs to mind when I think about those two, like Davis and Dowell, is levels. They had plenty of time at Rangers to prove themselves and show themselves. You know, like Dowell didn't get as much game time, but he got chances, and Davis had plenty. And they never imposed themselves in games. They never looked up to it. Davis looks like a career footballer who plays in his slippers and just doesn't want to get injured, to me. And then they've gone down to Division 1 and they've looked great for Birmingham, and Birmingham love them and they've done really well. And that's my fear, is like, you know, if Russell Martin is bringing them in, he's going to have to get a massive step up in performance, I think, for them to be remotely key players or even decent squad players for Rangers next season, because the fact that they didn't do much up here, but then they've gone down, 3 divisions effectively down south, and at a lower level they look good. Well, they're going to come back up here and go back up a level. So if we got decent offers for Dowell and Davis, like I would have them straight out the door. The whole point of the loan system is to try and do stuff like this, either to develop players or to make them saleable. I think they're both mature enough players. You're not going to massively develop them. And at the start of this season, you couldn't give them away. You could give them away in terms of being able to do a loan, but you wouldn't get any money for them. If we actually are able to bring in some money this season, like say 1.5 and 2.5, or like job lot of 4 million or something, I'd be taking that all day long and getting in a player at a slightly higher level. I might be wrong in that, but that's just like, Davis to me just doesn't. I know Russell Martin likes this ball playing style, and he may have different thoughts on Davis, but as a defender in Scotland, a lot of the time to me, it looked like he didn't fancy it. He would have a little bit like Proper, he would have decent games, but he never dominated. You take a look at Davis and you feel like he's got like the physical attributes and the skill set to dominate and to really to really sort of take control of a defence in the way that, I hate to say it, but Cameron Carter-Vickers does for Celtic. But he's never done that. To me, he's always kind of playing within himself. And like I say, Dowell, there's a couple of flashes where I think, wow, like where'd that come from? I remember doing like a drag back spin over and firing a pass into someone that was like breathtaking. But that's like maybe 2 highlights in a season-long highlight reel. So I genuinely would take any money we got offered for them and get them punted. I thought Richard's point about Cortez was a good one. Like, I was really excited when he came in, because he did have that 3 or 4 games where you're going, oh, what a player. And that first time finish against Hearts was just like the kind of thing you thought, yeah, that's the kind of football that you want to see. But it's interesting. I think the reason he has got so much grief is actually it's not really his fault. I think with Danilo, we bought Danilo and paid the money, and then he got injured. Whereas with Cortez, for some inexplicable reason, we signed up to this $4.5 million deal to buy him while he was coming back from an injury. And I think that's kind of got the fans go up a bit, because it did seem quite high risk for a club with the track record of injuries that we've got. So I think that's the reason why he's probably up against it a bit more. And Danilo got one of his injuries, scoring a goal and taking a right smash to the face, being brave. So I think, when you look at that, there's a lot of goodwill towards Danilo, although he's been here long enough without really putting a run together. So it would be lovely to see them turn up. In all honesty, I'd be more excited about the potential for Cortez than Danilo. I feel like we've got a sense of who Danilo is as a player, and I feel like maybe the sense is he's a decent striker, but maybe at our level and in Scotland, he's just not going to get a run. He's maybe not got the physicality, or he's just not robust enough. Cortez, that's what's going to be interesting. Is he just in a wee run of injuries that he's going to overcome, or is he one of those guys that once he starts getting injured, especially in a league like Scotland, and again he's played at youth level and at a more technical level, in a league like Scotland with the heavier pitches, with the winters we have here, with the way players are allowed to fly into tackles, is he maybe just not sort of built for that? I really hope he is, because when you look at his physical attributes and you look at what he did in that wee spell at the start, yeah, he looks like he could do a job for us. But I think, like Richard was saying, I think they probably both got about 6 months to get up and running, and that's probably, if not by January, we'd probably be looking to ship them out on loan, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll certainly been an interesting one, Billy. I think from my own take on those ones, I think, again, is it the style of play that the previous managers have put out that hasn't suited some of these players? Do we, again, it's all difficult to speculate beforehand. That we've spoke to great length on several pods on the channel about this style of play that Martin has implemented at his previous clubs and what he's likely to play for us going forward. And again, that the high press, kind of high attack, formation or style seems to be something that is key for him and his footballing philosophy. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how well the likes of Dowell and Cortez and Danilo fit in. And obviously depending on who else comes in, who else goes out, that may help things, it may hinder things. I don't expect him to get everybody in or all the positions filled that he wants to fill by the start of September, but I'd certainly like to think that the board are going to back him to get the majority of players in and positions filled that he needs or he feels he needs filled. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. I think from that we'll maybe move into the rumours then. As I said, we had Max Aarons come in this week, but obviously the last 24-40 hours has been rife with potential departures, the most significant being the rumour that Lille are interested in Hamza Egeman, and the rumour, the initial bid of around 17 million euros has been rejected by the club. Richard, I'll come to you on that one, and then we'll just obviously go into a kind of general transfer roundup. What were your thoughts on that one that kind of first broke over the last kind of 24-48 hours?
As soon as I read it, I sort of put my phone down and pretended it didn't happen. So I'm going to start the rumour right now that he's not going anywhere and we're rejecting all bids. All right, because I don't want him to go. I think we've got a cracking player in our hands, and I think another season we can get a hell of a lot more money for him. But it is what it is. Player trading model. We've gone on about it for years, and if the right money comes in, then we need to sell. Unfortunately, so I don't want him to go, but unfortunately, it looks like if the right money comes in, he's going to go.
Yeah, I kind of see the same. I think with the new owners in place, Richard, I think they will look to probably if the rumour is true and the figures that are getting talked about are real, then if we're going to get anything upward of 15 million for him with any additional sell on clause, it's certainly. I was going to say it's certainly too good to knock back, considering how badly we've been burned in the past. With again, we've touched on it before in various pods regarding the likes of Morelos and Kent, not cashing in on them when they were at their height. Billy, I'll come to yourself. What were yourself? What were your thoughts on the Egeman rumour? And do you think the club will get what they want for him? Or do you think it's maybe too early for him to leave?
I mean, we'll never know if we're going to get what we want for him, because Andrew Kavanagh and Pragmarati have been quite clear. Financial stuff is going to be, to use their word, opaque, and that's the way it should be. We shouldn't be going about like showing our hand and telling anyone what we expect or what we'd be excited by. I agree with Richard up to a point. I mean, I think Egeman's a player I would be excited to see for at least another season. Just the flashes and the goals. He's got stuff in his locker that just isn't anywhere else in our squad, and he looks like he's got a fair bit of development to go. A couple of questions I would have about Egeman are one, does Russell Martin see him as fitting into his style of play? Because he could be the best player in the squad. If he's going to be a square peg in a round hole, he's going to be less used to Russell Martin. The other factor about Egeman that we kind of have to bear in mind, and I think this is going to be part of the plan going forward, is we need to do a little bit what that mob across the city have done, which is probably punt one high-profile player a season. And we need to do that for a couple of reasons. One is actually to bring in the money, but also in terms of sustained growth. When you sell that player, that goes on to your turnover, and that increases your ceiling for FFP going forward. So there are ways we can do that, and if we get an offer in of 15 or say 20 million, takes a lot of commercial deals and season tickets and all sorts to raise 20 million, or you sell a player and suddenly that's increased your ceiling for next year. And, if you can sell a wee bit more next year, you can then actually increases your capacity to build the squad and to bring players in. So I'm kind of like I'm sort of getting splinters in this one. You know, like I would actually be, oddly enough, and it's probably not the popular opinion, but I'd be happier to see Raskin maybe go in some ways, because I think there's a danger that he may have hit a purple patch and may not kick on. I'm not knowing that for a fact, but I just wonder, given it been 2 years where he didn't really become the player we thought, whereas Iggeman's come in and you can see him going through the gears, and it would be exciting to see what he could do in a Russell Martin team. It would be exciting to see what another year. You know, he's settled in the country, settled in the squad. My suspicion is, if the rumours we're hearing are true, that he has already agreed terms with Leo, that sounds like mentally he's ready for a move. It's not saying he's agitating, but just, you know, if it happens, it happens. I'd be okay with 15 million. I'd be quite happy with 20 million. I think that would be, and that's, you know, with the caveat that I would rather get another season out of him. But we need to sell one of Raskin or Iggeman, I think, and depends how serious the interest is in both of them. It depends how Russell Martin sees them fitting into the squad. Just quickly to circle back to one point that Curry had flagged up, though, he's saying he wouldn't use the term legend for Tavernier. This is the endless debate. You can never win or lose this one. I think a player who comes from Rangers from the lower leagues and drives us to European final, who captains the team to arguably the most important title in recent times, and who hasn't played in a period of sustained success where he can rack up titles like great players have done in the past because of great players around them. I think a player that's the highest scoring defender in British football, I think he's got an argument to be a legend, but that might be a show in its own right.
Yeah, I'm sure you and Curry could take up a full hour on just the two of you talking about the pros and cons of Tav, and I'm sure we can get that arranged at some point. I'm sure Scotty's listening. I'm sure you can certainly get that set up. But yeah, it's certainly interesting. Again, the rumours about Raskin have kind of quietened down over the last week or so, probably because of the interest shown in Iggeman at the moment. Again, the proper rumour hasn't really went away. Again, I think these discussions that he was due to have are probably ongoing, and we'll probably see more in the next week or two on that one, in and on up to the qualifier with Panathinaikos towards the end of July. Richard, what about yourself? Maybe just come to you on the rumours so far, maybe more so on the departures, more so than incomings. We'll touch on that in a wee second. Again, we've touched on Iggeman, but what were your thoughts on the rumours about Raskin leaving, and obviously the rumours, as I say, about Proper going? And then, do you think at this point should there be any more rumours about anyone else in the squad, potentially departing the club?
There definitely should be more rumours. I think we should start one about Matondo right now, to be honest. Going from like 5 million to anywhere, to be honest. But I think with the Raskin one, it's gone quiet, but I think he probably will go. His stock's probably just about as high as it's going to get. He was outstanding for us at the last season, particularly towards the end. He's going to have to perform just as well, if not better, to maintain that. So I think we're probably going to get as much as we possibly will right now, especially with his contract situation. If he doesn't sign another contract, then his value is only going to diminish. So I think it's going to have to be this summer, unfortunately, which is a shame, because he's really starting to be somebody that we want to build a team around. The others, Proper, that looks more like a rumour. I think that's just a matter of time before it happens. I think that's best for all parties concerned. It's not really worked for him out here. He gave it a go. Doesn't really suit him. So shake hand. Thanks very much. Hopefully we recoup as much of what we paid for him as much as possible. With that as well, I think we'll probably hear more about Davies and Dill going. Probably back to Birmingham, especially Davies. I think that's the ball sort of seems to be rolling with that from what I read this morning. Just whether or not they're going to come in for Dill. But it's yet to be seen what else is going to happen with other players. Obviously, a few others probably looking to go out the door. I think McCausland will probably be one that I think, I'm not sure there'll be many rumours about him, but I think if an offer comes in, the club will definitely look at it.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Richard. I think, again, I know we're only in that kind of first week of pre-season. I think that the manager will want to kind of see the majority of the group back. Again, as we said, probably the start of next week before he really starts to drill down on who isn't going to be a part of the squad moving into the new season, and who he sees as as a surprise, as he's kind of touched on, and who's going to be integral. Yeah, again, same as yourself. I think the Davies, to Birmingham seems to be gathering a bit of traction this morning. He wasn't featured in any of the kind of videos. I think he was in a couple of shots at the start of the week returning to the training centre, but I've certainly not seen very much of him since then. So again, hopefully himself and Dill find a way back down to Birmingham. As I said before, they seem to do quite a good job for them in getting them promoted from League One. Same as Matondo, there was a kind of very short rumour. It didn't seem to go very very far. It was a Turkish team were potentially looking at him. So if you're watching this, please come and take him. I don't think he's going to come back in and see very much game time this season if he were to stay. I know we can't get rid of everyone. I know there's a few in the chat that are mentioning the likes of Butland as well. Maybe just on that, we'll kind of come into the potential incomings. Billy, obviously there was a kind of couple of rumours going around at the start of this week about, over the last couple of weeks, about the potential of bringing Aaron Ramsdale in from Southampton, having played for Russell Martin and being a kind of ball-playing keeper. What were your thoughts on that potential coming in? I certainly think wages would be a bit of an issue, but yeah, what were your thoughts on that rumour?
I mean, it makes sense when you look at Jack Butland. He's just not the greatest with the ball at his feet. He's not a bin fire, but he's definitely, you're kind of like sucking your teeth whenever the ball goes back to him, and he does have that slightly, not quite Bambi on ice, but he certainly has that look of like a player who's really having to concentrate to keep the ball under control when it's coming at him from certain angles. Yeah. So it'd be interesting, actually. I mean, in terms of, I'd kind of gone back and forth on this, because Russell Martin's going to have to do two things just now. He's going to have to try and build a squad that's competitive and can get us through European qualifiers, but he's also going to have to prioritise. He's not going to be able to do everything in one go. So what's going to be interesting is to see what does he think he needs to do first. And it's interesting to see that, he was very nice about Tav. I think a lot of people got a little bit overexcited when he said Tav was going to be a part of the future. He didn't say he was going to be playing. He didn't say he was going to be in the team. He said he was going to be important going forward. And you can do that in a number of ways in Tav's position. But, we've seen that Max Aarons come in. So, he said the nice thing, but he's addressed the issue. What's interesting to me is, you could make an argument that Jack Butland, as bad as he got last season, sort of settled down for a couple of games, and if he played solidly this season, or if he played to standard with Liam Kelly's backup, that wouldn't be a priority. Unless you're Russell Martin and you're looking at the whole way you open the pitch up is basically you've got all these sort of fulcrums starting in terms of possibility as you play the ball through the different phases, and the goalkeeper is number one in that. And if he feels that's essential, that might be where the sort of Aaron Ramsdale thinking is coming in, or a player who's good with the ball at his feet. Because if you've got a keeper like that, who's also a decent keeper, then it opens up your attacking options going forward. And how many times have we seen it in the past where our attacking option was down the right, and a team would just focus on that? Well, if you know that you can't shut down one channel through the middle, down the right or left, and that your keeper can actually play the ball a number of ways, immediately becomes more difficult for the opposition and the press. So I think it's interesting, if that's true, that he's willing to spend a chunk of the budget and the wage budget on a keeper who's better with the ball at his feet. To me, that's an interesting insight into what Russell Martin sees as a priority, that he really wants to get this style embedded. and that there might be other areas of the pitch he feels he can put a sticking plaster on. But if he goes for a keeper that's going to cost a bit of money, to me that's quite an interesting statement of intent, for want of a better term.
Sure. And I think, for me, I'm not the greatest fan of Aaron Ramsdale. I'm not convinced by him. But again, he's obviously done very well in his career to be, between, I think, Bournemouth was when he first kind of came to my attention, obviously went to Arsenal and then obviously to Southampton afterwards. But Richard, maybe come to you just as a kind of general point then, the fact that, we've seen Max Aarons come in. We've been linked with Connor Cody, Owen Beck, the left back from the Liverpool Academy, who was on loan at Dundee a couple of seasons ago. It certainly seems as if we're prioritising the areas that we as fans have certainly see to be the kind of the problem areas in the squad. What are your thoughts on the rumours around the likes of Cody and Owen Beck being linked with the club?
I thought it was a great start, really, to be honest with you, linked with those sort of players. I think it's something that everybody, all the fans can see is where we need to improve. Defensively, starting with that foundation, work forward. So I've been pleased so far. I've liked who we've been rumoured with. Whether or not those will come to fruition is a different matter. But what I would say, just going on to, don't want to go back to it, but the Butland thing, I don't think we're going to sign Ramsdale unless we know Butland's going to go. And he's on too much money. From what I believe, it had to be a board decision if we were going to pay his wages, for what he was looking for. So there's no chance we're going to bring in another goalkeeper, especially one of Ramsdale's quality. It's going to be on similar wages if Butland's still in the door. So he's going to have to move first before anything happens, unless there's more than 20 million being put into the club than what we've been told. But I think, in my opinion, Butland deserves one more chance, another season to find his form that he used to have. It's a clean break for everyone, for the club, all the players, new backroom staff, everything, new board. So hopefully he can regain that confidence and get back to the player that we know he can be, and the type of player that we're paying for.
Yeah, I think it's something a bit difficult one. I think, we certainly seem to be trying to focus on areas that we know we had problems with last season, and then obviously even before last season. Midfield, we've not really seen a lot of rumours regarding incoming midfielders as such. I know there's been a few comments in the chat about Czerny coming back, or his club Wolfsburg have said he's free. I say free to leave. He's up for sale. Billy, maybe touch on that one just for yourself. Do you think that one would be something that the club would be interested in bringing him back if they could negotiate a reasonable transfer fee for him?
I'd be astonished if it happens, to be honest, because Wolfsburg have made it clear that he's up for sale. And as I'd heard that there was interest from La Liga and a few other teams in top 5 leagues. I thought Czerny did a good job for us. I thought he got it. I thought, he didn't phone it in. He really kind of knuckled down after a slightly indifferent start and, a couple of high profile misses. And I thought, as a character and as a person, I thought he did really well. The point of coming to Rangers was to boost his profile and his career potential. And he kind of did that with his assists and his goals. I would be pretty surprised if he didn't get a move to a more technical league. Compared to Scotland, that's pretty much everywhere. But I'm thinking more like La Liga, somewhere where his size, which was a drawback, sometimes he could get muscled off the ball, and especially in Scotland, he could be sort of hustled out of games. But I think if he got a move to, if you're Václav Czerny and you've got the chance to move to Spain, and a league that's higher profile, better money, more exposure, and your game is going to thrive better. It's going to be a game where more technical players can potentially do better. Why wouldn't you do that? I would be very surprised to see him back at Rangers. Whether or not he's what Russell Martin wants, I don't know. I think again, in terms of physicality, like I would like to see us filling the team more with kind of, let's say, big units. But think about someone like Sima, who did. It was a different style of player, but did a lot of the things that Sherney could do, and maybe in a different way, but had that physicality and that drive. I'd rather see players like that. And to be honest, I think the move did what it was supposed to, and I think it would be a retrograde step for us and for Sherney if he ends up back here. Personally, I think Wolfsburg are after the money, and the figures that have been quoted, we're not going to be in the running for that.
Yeah, I agreed. I think just the age, the age of him, the fact that the Wolfsburg won, as I think it was rumoured, as I said, about 7 or 8 million for him. I just don't think we would really entertain that, considering the type of player that we seem to be linked with. Probably Conor Cody aside, seem to be kind of early to mid 20s, obviously energetic, that are going to fit the style of play that Martin wants to implement in the squad. Again, just conscious of time, lads, so I'll just give a quick shout out to our sponsors off to the Match I Go. You can see the banner running along the bottom of the pod at the moment. So for a 10% discount on any of the items on off to the matchigo.co.uk, please use the promo code Journal10 at the website for a discount. And again, if you are watching us on your socials, please give us a like, share and subscribe. Go to the YouTube page, get subscribed, get the bell notifications on, so that you're notified whenever we send out content, which is usually on a daily basis. So yeah, please get involved and become part of the Journal family. We are very much grateful for everyone that does subscribe to the pod already, but we're also very keen on growing our numbers into the upcoming season. Lads, just as a kind of general roundup, I know there was a couple other points I wanted to touch on before we finish, but I think the main one that we'll maybe finish on is the release of the new third kit this morning, which the Rangers Journal wrote. I'm trying to say it. The Rangers Journal's own Ross Graham did tout a few weeks ago, if not a couple of months ago, on the concept art that had been posted up through his own Twitter page at Rant Rangers. So please go and check them out, because he sent out a fair few belters. Richard, I'll come to you first on this one. What were your thoughts on the third kit being released this morning?
I think it looks good. I was a bit sceptical at first with the first sort of concept design. It seemed to be the Rangers released, with the sort of grey sleeves. I didn't quite like the look of it that much, to be honest. But now that there've been further ones released, I think it looks quite good. I think definitely going to be good. Basically.
Yeah, it certainly takes me back to, I think, again, that kind of 2008, 2009 season. I think when we had the kind of the dark charcoal striped one. I remember with Jean-Claude Darcheville. I'm sure there's a few pictures doing the rounds on socials. Billy, what about yourself? What were your thoughts on the third kit?
I've got to be honest, I love it. I think Umbro have done a pretty decent job, given that there was a bit of scepticism about them taking over. It's still Castore, but taking over the actual branding on the shirt. I think a lot of us were looking at it and thinking, oh, is it a slightly sort of like old school brand? I think they did a nice job with the home top. I love the second top, to be honest, as well. And this one, it's funny, if you'd have described it to me, I would have probably been iffy. But actually, the eye test, I just took a look at it and thought, that is smart. That is just. I think it's a lovely design. I think keeping the sort of diagonal on it's lovely, and the grey and the black works really well. So I'm very impressed with how Umbro have come out the gates.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting that we've got all three kits released before the start of the season. I think, in previous seasons we've kind of had to wait until near the start of the season, if not in the middle of the season, before the tops are released. So it certainly bodes well. I think again, I know that Cavan had touched on in the AGM, just touching back on that he mentioned the fact that we'd sold like 400,000 kits over the last year or so. I know a few of them were, a few comments on socials were saying that that's probably because half the kits have been reduced in costs since the start of last year. But 400,000 kits is still 400,000 kits. I think with that being said, I don't want to head over the hour, guys. Maybe just give your last shout outs, any last comments before we wrap up the pod. Richard, I'll come to you first. Any last words before we close out?
No, not really. Just going to say thanks for having me on, lads. So it's been good.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. I know it's your first pod on the Rangers news. I know you were on a couple of other pods during the week, so yeah, thank you very much for coming on and giving us some chat this afternoon. Billy, what about yourself? Any last comments before we close out?
I know we're closing out. I'll quickly crowbar in a reaction to the David Murray interview. Apparently, he's given an apology to the Rangers fans 14 years after the event. When he's got a book to plug, apology, aye right. It's the definition of self-serving. And also saying he's gone over that line again about Craig White. Oh, I just went in terms of what was in front of me. David Murray was known for doing background checks on fans. I'm pretty sure he did the same in Craig White. So I think the fact that he's done the interview and he's saying all this stuff to plug a book, I don't think Rangers fans will be fooled. I think history sort of like made its mind up on David Murray, and great though the period was, I think giving an apology now when you're plugging a book is a wee bit grubby.
Yeah, I think it's just the timing of it is probably more than coincidental. Yeah, I certainly think Billy. I know we're short on time. We could probably give it another minute or two, but yeah, myself, I've not seen the interview. I've not really read a lot of the comments, but I just think it's not great timing. But then again, it's never going to be great timing. Again, I'll admit myself, the success that we had in over the course of the 90s and the early 2000s was obviously very much down to him. Bankrolling the team and giving us the players and subsequently the success that we encountered on the park. But again, the way things ended has obviously left a bitter taste in more than a few fans' mouths. And I'm sure that will rumble on over the next few days once the other parts of the interview. I think it was only part one that was released today, so I'm sure there's another few parts that are going to come out. And I've seen it's kind of been papered over. It's been published amongst socials over the last 24 hours. So yeah, it'll certainly be interesting how folk come to react to that. But yeah, I think with that being said, we'll close out on things. Billy, again, appreciate your time today. I feel better for that,
so I got it off my chest, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, I knew you had it there, and I completely out of my mind there. So I certainly wanted to give you your moment to stand on the soapbox and get that one off your chest, Billy. I'm sure you a lot of the Rangers fans that are watching share your feelings on it. Please get involved in the comments as well if you want us to follow up on that. I'm sure we can get something arranged over the next few days and weeks ahead. But with that being said, again, Billy, thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Bob Harron. Every night is a Rangers Journal night, and again, thanks very much for watching, folks. Bye for now.